My friends, good day. It hasn't escaped your attention today. The crash. Very high profile, this Legacy 600 type aircraft, a twin-engine private jet, ultimately, which crashed while it was flying between Moscow and St. Petersburg. The radar track shows that this aircraft climbed to flight level 80280, and then it stabilized for a very short time, and after that, suddenly it was the fall. So when you look, there are a few videos that were filmed by members of the public on the ground, and you see people filming with phones that move a little bit. And then you hear the classic sounds. A plane that crashed. So the falling trajectory, even if we can't see the aircraft very well, the falling trajectory is vertical because we see this smoke behind the plane. So we see a vertical trajectory. That means zero horizontal speed and then a rather strong vertical speed. So it's a plane that's falling, and actually structurally it's damaged, because there's no plane that can handle or make this kind of trajectory. It's simple. A plane with both wings and its tail intact. It doesn't fall this way. It can do whatever it wants, but it will never fall like this. There, whereas here, it looks like there's a fall of the type. I don't know if I have one nearby. Here, we have a fall like a dead leaf. So it's in the process of falling, spinning around itself at times. You still get the impression that it's the right wing that's missing. It looks like a plane that's falling upside down. That means that the vertical stabilizer is pointing downward, and it looks like a wing is missing, probably the right wing. Of the theories suggested, since Wagner's head and his deputy were on board, the crash killed 10 people. Still, there were 2 pilots, a flight attendant, a woman who was identified on social media, plus 7 other people. Among these 7, we have the head of Wagner and his right-hand man who were traveling together, which is generally not recommended even for them. There are companies, corporates quite simply, that forbid their chief executive officer and his right-hand man from traveling on the same flight. So here, we already had a first act of carelessness, so we have 10 people in total. The theory that has been circulating on social media today is the missile theory. I took a quick look. That theory, but at this point I don't favor it. Why? Let me tell you. Yes. All right, first, there are a lot of elements that we need to consider. If the Russian state, Putin or anyone else had wanted to kill these people, where were they? They weren't far away. Because when you start working with explosives, missiles, all that, it's like you're a little bit in a desperate situation. But guys, they weren't fleeing Russia. They were taking a domestic flight in that country. By the way, this Legacy 600 has been flying between Moscow and St. Petersburg nearly every day recently. So if they had wanted to kill this guy, they would have simply arrested him one night at his home. And then the next day, they would have shown images of a Gazchaika or something crashing into a plane tree with 3 corpses inside. And then they would have said, well, the driver was drunk, he was driving too fast, and then bam, they crashed into a tree. Everyone would have believed them. They wouldn't have any reason on their own territory. Someone who, in the end, they just throw under the bus, launch a missile at him, and take a huge risk. For example, the plane could crash, fall on a house, a populated area, and cause even more deaths inside. You see the worsening. It's something... I'm not in their heads, okay, but it's something that seems relatively unlikely to me. Another thing, if we now look at the technical aspect, just now I was talking about the psychological aspect, if you will, but if we focus on the technical aspect, there's still an important element. The missile they would have used is the S-300, but missiles of that type, it's a family of missiles. The S-300S are still very particular. When they explode, they release tens of thousands of metal fragments. They create a cloud of metal pellets. One of the planes that was hit with that was Malaysia Airlines, 17. A 777, it was hit over Ukraine, if you remember, a few years ago by an S-300. If we look at certain parts of this 777, it looks like a sieve because the missile exploded in front of the plane, and the entire front part of this aircraft is riddled with thousands and thousands of holes. To give you an idea, when the S-300 explodes, depending on the model, it can release between 19,000 up to 36,000 pieces of metal. So when a plane enters a cloud like that, well, it's pierced all over. The 777, since it's a huge plane, if you look at the front part, it's really hit. The rear is much less affected, with large untouched pieces at the back. But why? The plane is very big, it's a 777, but if it's just one, it's a Legacy 600. We imagine that if it gets hit by an S-300, which is still huge, if it's a plane that will be turned into a sieve. But when we look at the elements we have, he has extremely clear images. For example, this horizontal stabilizer covers several square meters. There isn't a single trace of impact. We have an engine, probably the right engine. We have a jet engine, and we have the engine cover. It's intact. We have another image taken from a video that's circulated on Arab social media, which shows the aircraft's front, which shows the cockpit windows. In fact, the right window is intact. There are no signs of impact. So at this point, what is the probability that an S-300 explodes by the Legacy 600 aircraft? And all these elements that I just described happened by chance. None of them received the slightest impact from the several tens of thousands of pellets that were launched around. You see what I mean? That's the problem. It seems a little bit hard to believe purely from a statistical standpoint. So now what we're also looking at, we can look at something else. There's another one. There's another possibility, for example, that there was sabotage at the landing gear wells. If you look at the Legacy's landing gear, it's a landing gear that it's at wing level and closes inward. So the landing gear well is technically, if you look, it's located at the level of the wing root. So here, for example, if someone from maintenance or someone else went and placed a device there and attached it with a cable tie, indeed, if that device explodes, it can hit the wing at the root. And so, with the aerodynamic forces at the moment of the explosion, the wing can tear off and we could have a plane that will fall while spinning, as you may have seen with little or no traces of impact on the rest of the car line. Now, another thing, maybe it's just a work accident, because that's Wagner's company name. What's the company name of those guys who were in there? They're mercenaries. It's a group, military group. What did they do? They always handled weapons. So maybe, quite simply, they bought a new system of weapons, a new one, a missile system or explosives or mines. You should know that they are very involved in the Sahel recently. They were involved in the Sahel. That's where a war is being fought between Russia and then the West. Remember the story of Niger and all that. There is still something huge happening over there, and Wagner was involved there. So in reality, at this stage today, the Russian authorities don't really have any interest in killing. Those guys, they need them right now. So potentially these guys are purchasing a missile system, mines, or other equipment for use in the Sahel. They buy it and get a demo, a free sample to test. They don't take the necessary steps to load it onto a plane. That means they don't neutralize it properly. They don't prepare it properly for air transport because they want to go fast and all that. They're used to transporting this kind of thing in their private jet. They put it in the cargo hold and they take off. And then simply the system with the jolts, a bit of turbulence or something like that, well, it's going to explode, the wing will tear off, and then, quite simply, they'll crash like gloves. It's as simple as that. Maybe it's more a matter for the labor inspector than anything else. This story, all right, of course, we'll see in the days, in the weeks to come. Even between us, I don't have many illusions. Given the profile of the people involved, I'm not completely sure that one day we'll get to the absolute truth about this story. All right, but I'll give you a bit of what the possibilities are. And so for me, I'm ready to believe in the S-300, but I need facts. I need evidence. At this stage, I don't have any evidence. I don't have any proof at this point. I actually feel the opposite. For the S-300, I'll assign a probability of 20% that I'll increase if I ever see any signs of impact. Or if we see more structural elements, if the structural elements are clear and clean, the probability for the S-300 will go from 20% to 0. All right, good probability of a sabotage of this type. Of the type bomb in the landing gear, that's a possibility. And then also a probability important to the fact that he was carrying military equipment, that it must have exploded in his face. Simply thank you for watching this video up to this point. I'm still on vacation. And then I'll get back to you a little later in the coming days. Thank you, my friends. See you very soon.